It's 3 in the morning. I'm 14 years old and laying on the outside of my old Girl Scout sleeping bag on the front porch, and my girlfriend Jane is doing the same thing. We're wearing my dad's t-shirts for pajamas, and we're listening to KOL, Colorful KOL, Seattle. And we're waiting for Winfred Verney to get off his shift at Stan's Hamburgers on Rainier Avenue. You wait, I tell Jane. He always brings home 1,000,000 leftover cheeseburgers and lays them in a row on the roof of his car. What do you mean? He puts them in lines on his car. What for? I don't know, just to be lame. He'll give you some, though, but he has to lay them in rows first. He sounds cracked. Yeah, he's kind of cracked. I mean, Winfred was 17 and not that cute, but he was the cutest guy I knew for around 10 blocks, which means something when you can't drive yet. He also had a car and a friend, Tim, who wasn't that cute either, but that was okay because me and Jane also weren't that cute. Well, maybe Jane was. Okay, she was. She was actually gorgeous and could pass for around 16. It was because of being her friend that I actually had to start developing a great personality. We have the phone dragged out, and we keep dialing KOL to ask them to play House of the Rising Sun, our new favorite song. It's about a whorehouse, I tell Jane. I heard it was about heroin. I had never heard that version of the meaning before, but it sounded like it could actually be true. Yeah, I say, it's about heroin, of course, but the thing about this song is it's about heroin in a whorehouse. I pick up the phone and dial KOL again. You know what song is really about heroin, though, but no one knows it? What? Whiter Shade of Pale? Suck. No, it isn't. No, suck. It is, too. The whiter shade part is about white heroin. When it's a whiter shade of pale, it's better. Oh, sure, Jane says. Who told you? You know how they got the brown acid, right? You know that part where the guy says, don't take the brown acid? Yeah? It's the same deal with heroin. Pure white is the best. The DJ finally picks up the phone. KOL hotline. Hi, I say. I'm trying to make my voice sound different. Can I make a request? When I ask him to play House of the Rising Sun again, he hangs up on me. I give the phone the finger, and then I give the radio the finger. What did he say? That he's a dork. Did he say anything? Yeah, that he's a dork. I'm calling him back and telling him that he sucks. You dare me to? You want me to? Yeah. I dial the phone, and then Winfred drives up with Tim. Hey, Winfred, I wave. Oh, no, attack of the squirts. Shut up, I say. Yeah, shut up. Winfred half crosses the street and looks up at the porch. Who's that? Jane gets up on her arms. Who is it? Jane, she says. You don't know her. We watch him pull out 3 big white bags and start laying the hamburgers in a line on the roof. Told you, I say to Jane. Weird, she says, but she's smiling. The DJ answers the phone. KOL hotline. I put my finger on the hang-up button. Excuse me, but you suck! And then I press down the button and Jane and me crack up. Winfred waves a bag. You guys want some grease bombs? We go down the steps and the concrete of the sidewalk still feels warm on our feet. The door to Winfred's house opens and Mr. Verney comes out. He doesn't have his teeth in. Hey, no grab-assing. Ooh, Jane whispers. Who's that? Hey, Mr. Verney, I say. It's okay, he's nice. So you forgot your pants again, Mr. Verney says, and then he laughs at his own joke. He walks over to Jane. Hey, want to see my horse bite? No way, Mr. Verney, don't do that to her. I grab Jane away. He's going to pinch your leg. He's a pervert. Aren't you a pervert, Mr. Verney? I'm just a harmful old man. And then he picks up a hamburger, starts biting on it with his gums, and growling and looking right at Jane. She screams and jumps behind me, and Mr. Verney starts laughing and pointing his finger at her until he starts coughing on a chunk of bun. The DeLeo's door opens, and Mrs. DeLeo walks out in a hairnet over her curlers and this nightgown that is seriously looking like a huge weird tent because of her giant boobs. And she has her hands on her hips, and she's smoking a cigarette. And behind her I see the light of her TV on, and then her little dog Jingles comes out by her slippers. Raising hell, huh? Raising hell so the neighbors can't sleep. She takes a step onto her tiny porch. Ah, hell, Hazel, I thought you'd be happy to see Bert awake in your bed for once. And then Mr. Verney leans hard on his arm against the side of the car and starts laughing. Mrs. DeLeo looks at him. I can't say I'd even remember what to do. And then she starts looking slow up and down the street with her hands on her hips. She's moving her body like a searchlight. I see she's trying not to laugh. What do you got there? She walks over to Winfred and she leans her head toward the cheeseburgers. Winfred's biting on a hamburger and suddenly starts laughing. What? She says. She sticks her face into his. Never seen a beautiful lady in a negligee before, huh? Better watch it there, Hazel, Mr. Verney says. You know he's the sensitive type. And then, none of us can tell why, but they start laughing their heads off. We just look at each other like, what? What? Mr. DeLeo sticks his head out the door and runs his hand through his hair. Holy God Almighty, for Christ's sake, Jesus! Mr. Verney raises his hand. Hey, Bert! Bert goes back inside, and I turn and I see Jane and Tim leaning on the back of the car. Jane has one leg up, and she's nodding little tiny nods at everything Tim says. Mr. Verney sees me looking. Hey, Winfred, you think you can lift that little shrimp? What? He says. Mr. Verney points at me. Her. Her what? Lift her. I don't get it. Can you lift her? Do you think you can lift her? Christ, son, you deaf? Do you think you can lift her? Lift her? Are you crazy? Yeah, I could lift her. I could lift you. You couldn't lift me, Winfred. Hell, I could. Yeah, hell, you couldn't. Winfred runs over to Mr. Verney, and Mr. Verney starts laughing and making boxer's poses, saying, put him up your dukes, put him up. And Winfred keeps trying to grab him, and Mr. Verney keeps backing away, and we're laughing and laughing, and so is Mr. Verney, but then he stops laughing and tells Winfred to knock it off, and Winfred keeps going, and Mr. Verney says, I said knock it off, you hear me? And we all stop laughing, and then everyone's really quiet, just chewing their hamburgers for a couple minutes. Then Winfred looks at his father and says, a boy named Sue, Dad. A boy named Sue. That's you and that's me. He sounds like he's going to cry. He points his hamburger at his father. That's you and that's me, Dad. And then he suddenly walks away really fast into the yard, slams the gate, and goes down around the side of the house. What the hell? Mr. Verney says. A boy named Sue? What the hell is that? What the hell is that? He puts his arms out. What the goddamn hell is that? Mrs. DeLeo shrugs her shoulders and starts doing that searchlight thing with her body again. And I look over at Jane and Tim, and Jane's still on the car staring at Tim, but Tim's halfway in the street. He has his hands in his pocket and a freaked out look on his face. I'm going, everybody. Bye. And he's waving his hand and starting to walk backwards down the dark street until he's gone. I look at Jane. We should probably go up. You two take some of these cheeseburgers, Mr. Verney says. No, Mr. Verney, that's okay. But he's already picked up one of the white bags off the grass and is putting the hamburgers in them. Here, he says. Thanks, I say. Good night. Good night, Jane says. And then he does this thing where he sort of salutes us really fast. Well, I'm turning in, Hazel says, and she stretches. Jingles, you get in there. She stamps her foot in front of her dog, who's sniffing his nose out the front door. Now! Mr. Verney sits on the front porch for a long, long time, just looking at the street. We eat cheeseburgers and watch him. And then pretty soon I hear some birds, and I notice that the sky is lighter. Jane is asleep, and Mr. Verney is gone from the porch. I see the curtains moving over at Mrs. DeLeo's, and then Jingles sticks his head up and then yanks it back down. And now, by special request, here's House of the Rising Sun. Jane! Jane, wake up! And then I hear it. Oh, God, that guitar part just drives me crazy.